Hi everybody and welcome to episode 4 of the Woodworker's Ultimate Guide. Now in this episode we're going to talk all about a thing that you really need in woodworking, and that is wood. We're going to start with softwoods and we're going to go through hardwoods, and then we're going to go through a couple of sheet materials. I'm going to start with the lowest grade of softwood and then we're going to work our way through. So first softwood we're going to look at is treated softwood. Treated softwoods, things like using decking and things like that, things outside. You'd buy treated timber if you're building, making some trellis or something like that, or fence panels. All that sort of stuff would probably be treated. You always want to try and get treated timber for outdoors, because if you're using softwood outside and you don't treat it, it won't last 5 minutes. So if you use a treated timber, normally they recommend around about 15 years or something like that for a treated timber will last. So always make sure if you're using timber outdoors, if you can, get treated timber. Don't use raw timber, and do not get water-based treatments that you just paint on the surface of raw timber. It will not last 5 minutes. Okay, so this is treated timber. As you can see, if you can see there, it's got a slight green tinge to it. It's quite a low grade timber. You will get splits in it like that. It tends to be like a Carcassing timber, which we're going to have a look at in a minute. And then you get things like this, like a decking board. So that's treated as well. As you can see, it's got like a green tinge to it. Normally has a green or a brown tinge to it. Odd time you'll see different colours, but it's usually green or brown. So as I say, always try and use a treated timber when you're using softwoods outdoors. Now from that, we're going to have a look at Carcassing timber. What Carcassing timber is it's quite open grain. So if you can see that on the edge of the grain there, it's quite open. So it's not a very tight grain. It is just a normal pine softwood, but it's what's called Carcassing because it's used for things like roof trusses, floor joists and things like that. It's usually when you need a softwood and it's not really going to be on show, so you've not got to be able to get a good finish on it because it's usually hidden. If you tried to shove this through the planer behind me, you'd find it wouldn't plane up very well because it's too open grained, so you wouldn't be able to get a good finish on it. So it's not much good for anything else, but it's fine for floor joists, roof joists, studding, things like that. It's fine for, and that's Carcassing. Now from Carcassing we're going to go to Redwood. Now this is what's known as Redwood Pine. As you can see, it's not really red, but it's got a little bit of darkness to it, so it's not totally sort of light cream. It's got this darker graining pattern in it, and this is called Redwood. As you can see, the grain is a little bit tighter than the Carcassing. You will get knots in this. The lower the grade of the redwood, then you tend to get more knots in it. You can buy things like clear pine, which basically means it's not got any knots in because they've selected the boards. Of course, all trees have knots because it's where the branch comes off. So you're going to get knots, but they will sometimes select boards without knots in, and they call it clear pine. So that's redwood pine. Redwood pine will be used for things like architraves, sort of door frames, skating boards, things like that. Even softwood windows have been made out of redwood. So it's a good grade of, it's sort of a joinery timber. It's all right for outdoors, but same as I say, you're better off using the treated timber if you want it outdoors. Because if you use this, it's very hard to get as good a treatment as the treated timber. So I would stick with this for sort of indoor use. You can use it for things like shelves and furniture even, but it's not as good as the next timber I'm going to show you, which is Quebec pine. This is Quebec pine. Now this is called Quebec pine because it comes from Canada, or it can sometimes be called Canadian yellow pine or Canadian white pine. It's very dry. The normal pine timbers normally have around about 19–20% moisture content, whereas this stuff only has about 7 or 8% moisture content. And I know you can't sort of appreciate just how light this is. It's a very light timber. It's very easy to sand because it's very dry, so it doesn't clog your sanding sheets up like a redwood because it has a lot more sap in it. whereas this doesn't have so much sap in it. It's very low moisture content. This stuff is brilliant because it comes in wide boards like this, which is a 12-inch board or a 30-centimetre board. This is an inch thick or 25 millimeters thick. Also comes in thicker, 38, 50, things like that. But it's brilliant because it comes in these wide boards. So it's brilliant for making rustic type furniture or even pine furniture where you have it really smooth. It does plane up lovely and it sands up lovely and it takes wax lovely. So that's Quebec pine. It's a little bit dearer than Redwood pine, not as dear as hardwood, but for a pine, it's probably the most expensive pine you'll buy. That's Quebec. Same as I say, it's sometimes called Canadian pine or Canadian yellow pine or white pine. But that stuff is what you want to be using if you want to make some quality pine furniture and you don't want it to move. Because it's very low moisture content, you're not going to get a lot of movement in it. So it's perfect for furniture. Okay, so the next timber I want to look at is called white pine. Now what white pine is, this is white pine. It's horrible. It's horrible stuff. I try to steer well clear of this in my woodworking for several reasons. You'll get these horrible dark knots and usually have, you can see that, they have holes in the center of the knots, all the bits drop out. You get these horrible sap pockets, which is this bit here, which is basically where you'll get sap, wood sap running out of it, and it's horrible. If you get it on your clothes or your hands, you can't get it off. And it's so brittle, you'll get knots missing, you'll get lumps out the boards. It's just horrible stuff to work with. This is the sort of stuff they sell at superstores. If you go to the superstores and you buy timber, this is what they'll have on the shelves because it's so cheap and nasty. You look at the price of it at the side of a redwood and you think, oh, it's near enough the same or it's a little bit dearer, but it's not worth nowhere near the redwood stuff. It's, as I say, if you're trying to use this in woodworking, you'll get so frustrated because it doesn't sand up very nice. If you put it through a machine like a planer thicknesser, it'll just vibrate and shatter and all lumps will come off it. So be very careful. If I was you, I'd steer well clear of whitewood. It's sort of the lowest of the low timbers. Unless you want some timber, but then you may as well use a Carcassing because it's no better than Carcassing. This is planed up, but you can't sort of appreciate this, but it's not smooth at all. It's horrible. So, and another problem with whitewood is you'll get this blue staining. Can you see that? What that is when water's sort of penetrated the timber and it goes blue like that. You sometimes see this if there's metal content in the wood, you'll get a blue stain, but this has not got any metal in it. It's basically because water has sort of penetrated the surface of the timber and it just starts it going blue, which is basically a mold inside the wood because it started to go moldy. And if you get timber like that, it's already starting to decay and rot. So if you ever get offered timber that's got this blue staining in, then steer well clear, chuck it back at them, tell them you don't want it. So that's something to steer well clear of. So that's as pines. We've looked at pines now. Now I'm going to look at three hardwoods. The first one we're going to look at is beech. So this is beech. As you can see, it's quite a pinky coloured wood, sometimes called steam beech. The grain is very tight on it, as you can see. It's a very hard wood. This tends to be used for some things like chairs and things like that. They'll use it for worktops and things. It's a really good, solid hardwood. Very good. Planes up nice. As I say, it's got a pinky, peachy tint to it. So that's beech. The next one I want to look at, the next hardwood, is ash. Now this is ash, as you can see. It's a bit like oak, but it's a lot lighter. It's a very light wood. Quite tight grain again, as you can see. It's a very hard wood, so if you are screwing into this, you will need to pre-drill it. It's very hard. You just try and put screws into this, even a quality riser screw, you might find you'll snap your screw or burn your head off or something, but it's a very hard wood. So that's ash. So if you want a light wood that isn't hardwood, that's the wood for you. The final hardwood I want to look at is this one. Everybody knows this one. This is oak. Good all-round hardwood timber. Very expensive at the moment. You're probably looking 2.5 times the price of a softwood. But it's oak. You get what you pay for. It's a very, very tight grain, as you can see. Used for things like furniture, doors, wake surfaces, paneling and trims and things like that. There's a lot of different grades of oak though, so be careful when you're buying oak furniture from a superstore and things like that. It isn't the same oak as your sort of joinery manufacturers will use, so never compare prices with furniture brought from a sort of superstore and then go to a joinery manufacturers and say, well, why are you a lot more expensive? Their quality wood will be far superior to the wood you see in superstores. Okay, so that's the timbers out of the way. Now I just want to look at a few of the sheet materials you're going to use in woodworking. First sheet material I want to look at is this, is staling board, sometimes called OSB board. Back in the 80s when it first came out, this stuff was called wafer board because it's wafers of timber. It's sort of put under really high pressure with heat and adhesive, and it sticks together and it forms a solid board. Available in different thicknesses. This is 18 mil. You can also get it in a 9 mil and a 12 mil. It's a good all-round board, perfect for things like flooring or sheds and things like that, roofing, things like that. It's very waterproof, just a really good all-round board. So that's staling board. Now from that board, we're going to go to plywood, which is this one. Now this is, you get different grades of plywood. This is a sort of a good hardwood face plywood. You can get something called shuttering plywood, which isn't got such a good face on it. If you want an alternative to the staling board, you could use the shuttering ply. But this plywood is a good surface plywood. If you're putting a finish on it, you want a good surface. Made up of thin veneers, all sort of stuck together, as you can see. Available in thicknesses. It tends to start about 4 mil in thickness, and then you get 6 mil, 9 mil, 12 mil, 18 mil, 20 mil, 22 mil, 25 mil. So it's loads of different thicknesses. Tends to come in at 8x4 sheet, unless you have it cut to size. So that's plywood. Now from plywood, I'm going to go to MDF, which is this stuff. As you can see, lovely smooth surface on this. This MDF is made up of particles like dust, which is compressed together. Had a lot of bad press, MDF, because they found that the adhesive used in MDF, it's not so much the dust, it's the adhesive they use when they're making MDF, is linked to some forms of cancer, sinuses and things like that. So always, when you're working with this stuff, always wear a mask and dust extraction if you've got it, because it can be really nasty. But it's a really good board, ideal for furniture and doors and things, especially if you're spraying them or painting them. And just a really good all-round board if you need something that's going to stay flat and make furniture out of it, but not waterproof, so no good for using outdoors or anything like that. But saying about waterproof, you can get this stuff, which is moisture resistant MDF. Tends to be green in colour, exactly the same as ordinary MDF, but it tends to cut a lot smoother. So if you're cutting MDF, even if you don't need it moisture resistant, I would use the moisture resistant one because you get a lot cleaner cuts. As you can see, I've cut this the other day and it's just such a smooth edge on it, really nice. So it does paint up a lot better than the standard MDF. So if you are making furniture from MDF, always try and get the moisture resistant, this green one if you can, and you will find you'll get a lot better finish than the standard MDF. So I hope you've enjoyed that, episode 4, all about timber and sheet materials. Next time, episode 5, which is next Friday, we're going to be taking a look at fixings. We're going to look at screws and raw plugs and things like that. We're going to dive into the world of fixings. There's loads to look at, loads to talk about. So I hope you've enjoyed episode 4. If you have, give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Share the hell out of it. And I'll see you lot next Friday, 8 p.m. for episode 5, Fixings.